Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. If you were watching the channel, then you probably saw that I received this Sharpfinger from a viewer of the channel. A guy named Jeff sent this to me out of the kindness of his heart, and a really impressive knife. It is something that I have been looking for quite some time. It's a Schrade Old Timer 152 Sharpfinger. And this is a classic knife that was made by Schrade, and is still made today by Schrade Walden, I guess you could say, or you will see it in the Old Timer line even today. Obviously, the ones made today are made in China. This was made in Ellenville, New York, by Schrade back around the 80s or 90s or so, sometime around then. I don't have a specific time for it, but it is a classic pattern by Schrade, and I thought I would talk a little bit about the history of the Sharpfinger before I show you all the knives. Now, for those who don't know, it's just a small little upswept skinner. And this design was something that Schrade came up with. I've been trying to find out who at Schrade came up with it, but so far I have been unable to identify an exact person. All I know for certain is that it is a pattern that came from Schrade. The knife first showed up on the scene in the middle of 1973, and it was kind of known as a Sharpfinger, but it really was officially released in 1974, and at that point there were a few refinements versus the ones that showed up in 1973 that turned into what is now known as the Sharpfinger, and that's when it got the name Sharpfinger in 1974. And according to the descriptions I read, it says that it has a hollow grind blade, and it might be hollow grind, I don't know, but I tell you what, when you get down here at the bottom, it felt more like a convex grind when I first had it. Now this knife, the grind might have been changed. It is a used knife, but this is basically the way the very first Schrade Old Timer 152 came out. So in 1974, this knife came out. It had the saw-cut Delrin handle that was pinned in place with the oval Old Timer shield. This is the way it first came. I believe it also, from the beginning, had the lanyard hole in place, and has almost always had a leather sheath, at least the ones made in the United States. Now, I know that there are some versions after leaving the United States that Schrade might have made that did not have a leather sheath, but even most of the ones post 2000, I think 8, I believe that's it, 2004, post 2004, when they became Taylor brand, most of the old timer Schrades, most of the Schrade Sharpfingers still had a leather sheath. Notice a little bit of a difference in these two sheaths. I don't know if all of the Schrade sheaths in the US had the snap going in this way, you know, the retaining strap. Notice how this one is, which is a little bit easier to work with than the one that wraps all the way around. And this holds the knife definitely tight inside the sheath. Also notice the rivets on there. Like I said, this is USA made. This is a Schrade made in China for the 65th anniversary of Schrade Walden. I originally thought this was a Staglon or Delrin handle, but it is actually bone with a G10 liner, I believe. And you notice you have the Schrade Walden on here, or well, Schrade here on the snap. And you have the snap that is in the way of the blade when you're pulling it out, and also when you're putting it in, and it gets cut quite badly sometimes. Not to mention, it's just hard to get this knife into that sheath and part of that reason is because of the snap. So this is a much better sheath design than the later version here that was made in China. I don't know, man, it feels like something is definitely in the way all the way around on this one. Also, just not as good of a sheath. But in any case, that's the difference between China and USA. That's not what I really wanted to talk to you about right now. I'll talk more about this knife in a little bit. Instead, let's concentrate on Schrade USA with the Old Timer. That's the one that they had. The Schrade Old Timer originally had a 1095 carbon steel blade, and it sounds like they used the carbon steel blade throughout most of its history, at least in the Old Timer line. But the pattern was very popular with Schrade because this was something unique when it came to the a hunting knife because of how small the blade was. Most hunting knives before 1974 had a much longer blade and a more substantial blade than what you're having here. This is basically just a blade tip for the hunting knife. You got a good handle there, but a blade that is only, as you can see there, right at 3 1/4 inches long. I guess you could say a little bit longer than that with the cutting edge. And the knife itself is just 7 1/4 inches overall. So you've got a handle that is only 3 1/2 inches as well. So you're looking at a knife that's about the size of a bird and trout knife, but it's not a bird and trout knife. That's the big difference with it. This was not designed as a bird and trout knife. This was designed for larger game, like a deer or an elk or something like that. You could actually skin larger animals with this than what you would expect. And that was kind of a new idea or novel idea when it came out in '74. So this is a bird and trout knife. Something for small game, for fish, for little birds, things like that, you know, quail, stuff like that. This knife, could you use this on a quail? Maybe you could, but this knife would work a little bit better. And what used to happen is you used to have these piggyback designs for knives where you'd have 2 knives, one small one and one large one. Well, this knife, the Sharpfinger, kind of replaced those 2 knives with just one knife. But the idea was you could actually use this to skin your deer. Yeah, you weren't using this to process your bait for your fishing line or something like that. Could you use it for that? Sure, but that's not. The idea was this knife could do it all. That was the plan, I think, with the Sharpfinger when they came out with it. Now, oddly enough, when it first came out in '74. I think it was probably patented. I don't know. I cannot find any patent information on it. At least not yet. But the interesting thing is from what I understand, it did not get trademarked until 1980. So in 1980, Schrade came out with this and with a trademark for this, calling it the Sharpfinger, even though they had been calling it the Sharpfinger for about 6 years already. Now, as I think I mentioned, the old timer Sharpfingers were most often 1095 carbon steel. Schrade also came out with a stainless steel version of this knife, but it wasn't called a Sharpfinger. It came out in the Uncle Henry line, and in the Uncle Henry line, the exact same knife, except it did not have the saw-cut Delrin. It had the Staglon handle and a stainless steel blade, and it was known as the Uncle Henry Wolverine. So, if you run across one of these, what looks like a Sharpfinger that's an Uncle Henry, and it's stainless steel, it was actually called a Wolverine when it first came out. I know that they also have a couple other knives known as a Wolverine, but the Uncle Henry was the, I think it was the UH 152 or the 152 UH Wolverine. This was just the 152, but I also know that you'll see these with I think you'll see these also with a 152 OT for Old Timer. So those are some interesting facts about this particular knife. The only other company that really at the time was making a knife similar to this, and they basically copied the Old Timer Sharpfinger, was Camillus. Camillus saw the popularity of the knife, and they came out with their own version of it. I'm not exactly sure when that version came out, but in any case, the Camillus version of it was known as the Sharp Hunter, or the Grandpa Sharp Hunter. Those are less common to find than the Schrade. Also, Winchester came out with I believe a USA-made version of this. I do not know what Winchester called it. That would have been much later as well. And today, the only USA company that I know that is making it is Bear & Son. And this is the Bear & Son that I have. I don't know if Bear & Son uses a different handle now or not. This one is about 10 or so years ago that I bought it. Maybe even 12 by now. Any case, you can see it's a little bit different. This was in 448 stainless steel. See there, Bear & Son, Bear MGC USA. It has the I think they call it India Stag or something like that, but it's basically Staglon. So imitation stag handle, made of Delrin. You've got the two pins, very similar to the Sharpfinger in every way. The way the handle is set up and the design and everything else, very similar. Obviously, you can see the difference here is the way the hollow grind is done on the blade. You have a more substantial spine running there, or at least it looks like a more substantial spine. If you look, the blade on the Sharpfinger actually is thicker along the spine here. But they both have that wonderful little upswept tip going on with them. So really nice little knife. Blade profile is about the same. Handle profile is also about the same. A lot of people complain about the fit and finish of the Bear & Son. I think it's really pretty decent, especially if you're just buying this knife as a user. But this does feel better. I wonder which weighs more. I'm going to check out the weight between the two of these. Okay, I'm just going to do the ounces. 4.13 ounces for the Old Timer and 3.9 ounces for the Bear & Son. So the Bear & Son is almost an ounce lighter than the Old Timer, and I think a lot of that has to do with the handle there, and also the fact that the blade stock is slightly thinner. So that shaves an ounce off of it. I guess some people would say that this blade is going to be more substantial as well then, and less likely to break because it is a slightly thicker blade, 1095 carbon steel versus 440A. I don't think that's going to make much of a difference. I think they both have about the same HRC, somewhere around there in the 56 to 58 HRC. Yeah, I know someone would really like to see this in, CPM or something another, some new super steel or something. But I think for most hunters, this is more than adequate, something like this. In any case, that's the difference between that one. Now, this was a knife that I made. It was a blank that I got and some handles that came with the knife. I had to do a little bit of shaping on the handles and such and fit it in there and then epoxy them in place and pin it and all that other stuff and fix the hole in the back here. But we can see this is closer to design. Well, it's somewhere in between the two, but made it myself. So as you can see, it's not perfect. This is actually the first knife I ever put together. It was from a blade blank. The blade blank was supposed to be 440C. Who knows if it really was. It was made in China. The handles were supposed to be Delrin. Who knows if it really was, because, again, it was made in China. But I think I did a decent enough job with it. Put my name on there. Feels good in the hand. Much lighter because this is even thinner, as you can see right there. But the otherwise, the blade profile is that of a Sharpfinger, though this is not a Sharpfinger because it's not made by Schrade. In any case, really like this knife. My problem with the Old Timer, though, is I am of the opinion that I do like a straighter blade than the upswept portion of the blade here. But a lot of people, I guess once you get the knack of this blade, they really like it a lot. And it is really good for slicing. This is a good one for food prep, but it's not very good for like bushcrafting work and stuff like that. This is much better for food prep. And I would also assume that it is a much better knife when it comes to skinning deer than a lot of the smaller bushcraft knives. And that is something that people need to take into consideration with knives such as this. Now, one last thing I want to mention about this is this knife here, which I've already talked a little bit about. It's really a good knife. It feels good in the hand. You can see there. I bought it because of this, the blade edge. You know, 1948 to 2011. This knife was made sometime around 2011. Schrade's 65th anniversary. Schrade Walden. You see right there. See Schrade Walden. And then SCHWALD 152 on the backside. So you know it's a 152 pattern. It does not say where it was made on the knife or on the sheath or even on the tin that it came with. I do believe that what it did have was a sticker on the blade that said it was made in China. That is what I think was the case. It might have been either on the knife itself, or it might have been on the tin that it said made in China. And that's part of the deceptive nature of some of the companies out there when they go around making knives. It's like, yeah, we got to say it's made in China, but we don't have to make it that permanent, or we're going to put it on so lightly that it'll be easy to wipe it off or something like that. And I see that with other companies besides Schrade. I see that a lot with like Kissing Crane and things like that. But in any case, when it comes to the 152, the Sharpfinger, I have been tempted on numerous occasions to pick one up by like a Coe River or something like that, but I have always decided, no, I'm not going that direction. I want to keep this USA made, and that's why I was so happy to get this. I mean, as a gift. I have been looking at buying one of these for quite some time, but I've always passed on them because of the amount of money that people ask for, and they're ridiculous prices. So I was hoping to pick one up at a gun and knife show or something like that, or at a flea market or someplace like that, because the prices on eBay are actually ridiculous when it comes to these knives. And I really wanted to have it in my hand to see what kind of shape it was in. I'm very fortunate that Jeff sent me such a wonderful knife, because this is fantastic, and I'm really blown away by his generosity. I don't know what else to say about that. But I do have this one, so now when I started reading more about these, which is what I did, I went immediately and started reading more about the Schrade Old Timer, and that's how I found out about the, because I was like looking for, well, what about Uncle Henry? Is there an Uncle Henry Old Timer? Uncle Henry Sharpfinger? And it's like, no, there's not. And then I because I was looking all over, and then I read that actually the Uncle Henry version of the Sharpfinger is known as the Wolverine, and it's in stainless steel, 440 stainless steel as opposed to 1095 carbon. So when you get right down to it, the Baron Son upswept Skinner, there's 753. If it's in 440A stainless as this one is, it's really not a copy of the Sharpfinger. It's more of a copy of the Wolverine. And I think that's the same thing with the Sharp Hunter from Camillus, because they also used, I believe, 440A or 420 in their Sharp Hunter copy of this knife. Or maybe the Wolverine is also a copy of the Sharpfinger, but the stainless steel version, because, you know, Old Timer versus Uncle Henry. In any case, what I would like to do now is leave you with some passing words about the Sharpfinger from apparently one of its biggest supporters, a guy named Sonny Barger, who was the founder of Hell's Angels Motorcycle Club. And he said, "I actually prefer fixed blades like the Sharpfinger to folded blades. I use my Sharpfinger as a tool. I do everything with it. I like knives with sharp points. You never know when you might want to pop a balloon or peel a banana." Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Stick around for some slides, and I will talk to you again soon. As a final thought on the 152 Sharpfinger by Schrade, if you can get a USA made one, I would strongly suggest doing that. If you're going to settle for something out of China, go ahead and get the Schrade Sharpfinger as opposed to like an Akoi River or something. I think it's going to be a better version of it. But if you're looking for a USA made Sharpfinger lookalike, then right now I think the only one on the market is the Baron Son, the 753, and it is a really well-made knife. I do like it. I've done a video on this before already as well. I believe it is still being made. What would really be great is if Baron Son were to take the their 753 and make a version using carbon steel, the 1095 carbon steel blade that you found in the original Schrade 152s. That would be a terrific alternative if Baron Son were to do it. Otherwise, you're stuck with a stainless steel blade for 40A stainless, which is not bad and is easy to clean up as well, and also easy to sharpen, but not quite the same as 1095 carbon steel. In any case, that's my last thoughts on the Schrade. Well, last thoughts in this video on the Schrade Sharpfinger 152. I'm sure I will visit it again. Thanks for watching. Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.